The story. Kind of a different approach tonight. A little softer. Hi, I'm Dan Haggerty. Welcome to The Story. No mask, no service starting in Washington today. They're going to start enforcing those rules right now. Hopefully you do as well as Portland did over the holiday weekend. We just learned that the OLCC didn't have to hand out a single violation in the city for mask violations at all. Way to go. Great job, Portland. Central Coast? Not so much. Oregon, though, Washington, keep up the mask wearing. Well done. In fact, we would like you to show us your mask. Tweet us a selfie with a mask on. Hashtag Hey Dan. My mother-in-law just fixed me some Hey Dan masks, the story masks. They look so good. I can't wait. They're on the way. I'm going to show them to you when they get here. But look, send us your pictures. Set a good example for everybody. Meantime, let's get started with the show. And we are going to start with our big story, which is a follow-up from our big story from last night. And if you watched, you know that it is a pretty heavy topic. A group of drunk white men taunting and terrifying a black family on the Oregon coast on the 4th of July. Now, tonight, those men face criminal charges, and that family is sharing not only their story, but also this video of what happened. Now, the mom told Maggie Vespa that she, her husband, her kids are traumatized by what these men did, but they're grateful for who stepped in to help.
Hey, you just violated my
Cell phone video shows the tension and the moments. Lincoln City Police tell us they formed a line between these 7 men and the black family they were targeting. It happened Saturday, the 4th of July. Days later, the wife and mother in that family says it was hell.
It was sickening, and it should have never happened. These guys have no heart. They have no soul.
The woman talked to me on the phone but didn't want herself ID'd. You see, the men have been charged with this list of crimes, things like riot and harassment, but police told us the charges weren't enough to keep them in jail due to COVID restrictions. That in mind, the woman is too afraid of these men to publish her name, but she wants you to hear what happened. It started when the family arrived at the inn at Spanish Head Saturday afternoon. The woman says her kids ran into some of these guys in the elevator.
That's when they did the first Nazi symbol to them. And they said, you guys have a good fourth, right?
The woman also says 2 of the men flashed her friends the middle finger. She went to the front desk to ask hotel staff about the incidents.
She said, those guys have been giving us problems since last night. They were shooting fireworks off the balcony, and they were starting to harass people at that point. And so I said to Greg, well, how come you guys are not doing something about it? He goes, well, what should we do? We've already gave them warning.
Determined to shake it off, the woman says her family went down to the beach. That's when they saw several of these men yelling and waving a flag from their hotel room's balcony.
The flag says, Trump, make America cry again.
Soon after that, she says the men came down onto the beach and set up camp right in front of her family, the only black family in sight. They had a huge boombox.
They had different songs that they were playing. They were hateful songs about killing black folks.
Then she says the men who were clearly drunk started taunting them.
They were saying, go back to where you came from, take your asses back where you came from. He said, aren't they protesting down in Portland? Why didn't you guys go down there?
She says there were 2 particularly scary moments. Here's one.
The one guy that did so one of the guys came by my husband and he did like a bang bang with an invisible, like he had a shotgun, like he had a pistol, and he did bang bang to my husband.
Here's the other moment.
Then the one jerk came over with a firework, he had it in his hand, and he tossed it sort of towards our area, not directly in our fire pit, but like towards us, and he goes, that's just a taste of what you're gonna get.
By that point, she said police had showed up, nearly 30 officers total. The men, police confirm, tried to fight officers multiple times. Officers lined up to protect the family from the group. And after the family went inside, they arrested these 7 men. The woman told me she wanted to thank Lincoln City Police, who saw the incident for what it was.
One of the officers that was standing in the front line, he came around and he talked to me. He said, ma'am, I want to apologize to you, and this makes me, he said, I'm tearing up. I want to cry. Because they came up to him about 4 times, and they were saying racial slurs, but we could barely hear what they were saying.
The Lincoln County District Attorney told us today these are the charges filed thus far, but they're still investigating, pointing out between the men charged and the family targeted, close to 20 people were involved in this incident. Going through reports will take time. But to support a bias crime charge, they'd have to prove at least one of the men threatened the family with serious injury. The woman, whose family is traumatized, hopes that's coming.
It was clearly a hate crime that did not turn into a fatality. That's what it was.
Hey, Dan. Okay, so just a quick note here, because I do want to point out there's a lot to dive into in this story, but you heard the woman in our piece saying that she talked to staff at the inn at Spanish Head and talked to them about what her family had been going through, and they told her about incidents earlier in that day and the day before. She feels like these men should have been kicked out well before the confrontation at the beach. And I talked to managers there just today. They say they are reviewing what happened, and they're reviewing their policies tied to basically guests who target or harass other guests. And they say they're doing that to make sure, as one manager put it, this just never happens again. So that's in the works too.
Now, one thing, Maggie, that I think a lot of people are still curious about: who are these guys? What do we know about these people who are capable of doing such a terrible thing?
Yeah, we don't know a ton at this point, to be honest with you. We've been trying to dig into their backgrounds as much as possible and speak to them. We've been trying to reach out to them. Most of the phone numbers that we were able to find for these 7 men in public records were disconnected. But that said, this is kind of why you and I are jumping on Zoom late in the day, because we did get one phone number from court documents for Alexander Saranchuk. It was from court docs again. I called earlier today and a woman said, well, he's not home now. You can call back. So I called back and he said, I'm going to be talking to my lawyer tomorrow. After that, I'll see if I can talk to you. And that was the end of the conversation, basically. It was really brief. And then as far as criminal records, one caught our eye. We dug into the past of all 7 of these men. And we saw on the record for Gennady Kachankov that he was convicted last year of assault with a deadly weapon. So we'll keep trying to learn more and keep trying to reach out to these men. But that's basically what we know so far.
Okay, so we are learning some more about them, but the focus of the community really is still on this family, these people who were terrorized, and the poor woman at the center of all this who was there with her family and with her friends. I just can't imagine.
Yeah, I mean, they're so shaken, understandably, right? I mean, she told me that she and her family, no one in her family that she remembered or knew of been through anything like this before, where the racism was so obvious and the people that were behind it were just kind of so proud of it, even in the face of law enforcement when they showed up. So that's going to stick with them for a long time, obviously. At the same time, she really wanted me, she told me specifically that she wanted me to thank a couple of groups. The Chapel by the Sea in Lincoln City, she said people from that church reached out, a local pizza parlor as well, give the family a big gift certificate. And then she told me multiple just people who live in Lincoln City had reached out, including one woman who said that they could come to her property and sit on the beach there and kind of feel more protected. And she said those people just wanted the family to know that they're welcome in Lincoln City. Side note, by the way, this family's been going there for 20 years. So this kind of feels like a place where they have a little bit of familiarity. They've been going to that hotel for a long time. That said, what happened this past weekend is obviously scarring. So it changes their perspective for sure, but they appreciate everybody reaching out.
Absolutely. Maggie, thank you.
Now, as you might imagine, we have been getting some incredibly passionate responses to this story at thestory@kgw.com, sending us emails or hopping on Twitter and using the hashtag #HeyDan. A viewer named Craig wrote that he thinks it is total BS that there are no hate crime charges. I'll be honest, Craig's comment was a lot more extensive than that, but I think this is the only safe part that we can read for you during the 6 o'clock hour over the television waves. Now, look, Craig, Maggie mentioned toward the end of her piece what it would take to have these charges elevated to a bias crime, which is Oregon's version of hate crime. Basically, the authorities would need to prove at least one of the men threatened the family with serious injury, which brings up that age-old question: when free speech becomes illegal hate speech. Now, a good example of the last time that we saw this question, I think, is the Jeremy Christian trial. Now, before he was sentenced to life in prison last month, Christian's defense tried to prove that his racist, violent language that he was screaming on that MAX train back in 2017 was actually protected by the First Amendment. Now, in the end, the jury decided that it wasn't protected and that he had crossed that line into a crime with his words. But that line that separates the two is not solid. It's quite gray at times, and the laws are written to help protect our rights to free speech. So For now, we're going to have to wait and see what investigators think they can prove in this case. Of course, we will keep you updated. Meantime, here's something that we think is worth your time. We've been talking a lot about how race and the pandemic are not separate issues, how they overlap, as seen by this map here from the New York Times. This is a look at all the counties across the U.S. with race and ethnicity data on COVID-19 cases. They color-coded each county by which race or ethnicity group or ethnic group has the highest rate of cases. You can see that all that red there on the eastern part of the country, that means that black people there are being infected at a much higher rate than anyone else. In Arizona, those purple areas, that means that Native Americans are being infected at a much higher rate. Now, as we take a look at the Pacific Northwest, in both Oregon and Washington, there's a lot of yellow, especially around Seattle, Portland, and in eastern Washington. And that means the Latinx community is getting COVID-19 at a higher rate than anyone else. Let's take a breakdown now of the Portland metro area specifically. In Multnomah County, 26% of people infected are Latinx. That's way over representative of the Latinx population in the county, which is just about 12%. Compare that to white people, who make up 43% of the cases, but make up nearly 70%, 69% exactly of the population. So you can see there's a big disparity there. And the disparity is even bigger in Washington County. Almost half of the coronavirus cases are in the Latinx community, but they only make up about 17% of the population. 34% of the people infected are white, which make up 65% of the population. No, the question is, what is causing this inequity? So people of color have historically had unequal access to health care and healthy jobs and homes and lifestyles, and they're more likely to have jobs that involve interacting with the public, which means they're at higher risk of getting sick and catching this virus. We talked to Multnomah County Health Director, Health Officer Dr. Jennifer Vines about that today.
We are definitely in this for the long haul. We say we're in it together, and that to me means that we all need to do our part in taking precautions, which right now is face covering and respecting what the governor has put in place as far as various protections around social distancing. But we are not all equally affected by this virus. And so we are absolutely seeing disproportionate impacts on African Americans, on Latinx communities, indigenous communities, people of color. So the burden is falling, it's not falling evenly around our community. And it's going to take all of us working together, I think, to right that particular injustice as we see it through the lens of the broader racial injustices that our country is just now addressing.
Now, last month, the Oregon Health Authority acknowledged that these racial disparities exist, and they promised to do something about it.
A centuries-long history of racism and oppression have led to the very health conditions that exacerbate the impacts of COVID-19. At OHA, we've been too slow to recognize that threat and act on it. For that, I'm truly sorry. This is a time when people are angry, hurting, and afraid. I want to acknowledge those very real feelings. I want to acknowledge the failings, including OHA's and including my own, that have contributed to them. OHA will do better. I will do better. We have to.
So what are they going to do? What is doing better? Well, OHA is meeting with leaders from communities of color. They're working to improve race and ethnicity data for COVID-19 to better understand how it's affecting different communities. They also want to improve access to testing and treatment and support services. And they also say vulnerable communities will get priority for any possible vaccines. Portland's been growing for a long time, and we've got a vault full of evidence.
Here's our news analyst, Tom McCall.
Along with some familiar faces. And yes, you still have to pay your taxes this year. And a viewer has a question about one humongous fungus in Oregon. When the story continues. Welcome back to The Story, everybody. Thanks to everyone watching from home and writing in using that hashtag #HeyDan. As always, you can always email us too at thestory@kgw.com. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. There are lots of ways to get in touch with us. Your comments and questions drive so much of the content and everything that we talk about on this show. So please continue to reach out, and thank you to everybody who has. I got this email from Jim. He said, "Hey Dan, I'm confused. I thought we were supposed to file our taxes on July 15th, which is now like 10 days away. You would think that we would be hearing advertisements to do your taxes, but nothing. You were right, Jim. Your calendar is correct. Tax day is still July 15th, which is now next week. It's usually in April, of course, but the IRS extended the deadline 3 months because of the pandemic. As for why you're not seeing ads from tax prep companies and things like that, that might be because it looks like most people have already filed. The IRS said that they got nearly 140 million tax returns as of June 26th. That's a little less than they got all of last year. So if you haven't filed, now is definitely the time. Thank you, Jim. Now, I'm sure lots of us have been ordering more takeout than usual during this pandemic, or maybe you're doing what you normally do. No shame in that. Now, my favorite part of ordering food on one of those delivery apps is ordering a $12 meal and being charged twice that amount, which, look, if I'm hungry, it's worth it to me. Thing is, those third-party apps like Grubhub and Uber Eats, they take a pretty big cut away from the restaurants, and our local spots are really feeling it. In fact, tomorrow, Portland City Council will vote whether to put a 10% cap on these fees. Right now, apps can pocket as much as 30% or more of every item they deliver. Seattle and San Francisco, they've already approved caps. So have LA, New York, DC, and Philadelphia. I talked to a small business owner earlier today who would really love to see this happen here.
One, it's just extremely difficult for a small business to have our own delivery system, especially in a wide system like Portland. And so these delivery systems, these companies have systems enabled for restaurants to easily get orders, to easily get the information, to connect with the driver. And we need those apps so that we can deliver to more customers than are just right next to us. The problem is that they have this technology and they have these systems, but they're extremely expensive. And they take, I think one of mine is like 33% of my sale goes to the delivery system instead of going to me, and that's just unaffordable. It's unattainable.
Now, typically, if the world was not turned upside down right now, this would just be they have a great design and a great business, and they're going to be profitable because of it. But considering that most people, as you mentioned, aren't going out, can't go out, choose not to go out for very clear health reasons, something you think needs to be done here? They need to throttle back. At least the city needs to put a cap on how much they can charge.
I do think that would be wise in the moment. I think I understand that businesses need to make a profit. I understand that corporations need to make a profit right now. But if we need to support the small businesses within our city, we need to decide the ways that we can help them. And right now, huge companies like Grubhub, these are national big companies. They are able to they can take a little bit of a hit more than I can take a hit.
Commissioner Udaley, who you see there, her team helped craft this ordinance. She and Mayor Ted Wheeler are expected to introduce it during tomorrow's meeting. So sometimes we here in Portland think that growth in this area is like a new thing, like we invented 5-story apartments with ground level retail or something. But the story we're about to show you is going back decades. We found an example in the KGW Vault of a groundbreaking at Lloyd Center, and you might see some familiar faces.
1958 was a record-building year for the Portland area. For the story on that, here's our news analyst, Tom McCall.
Industrial, commercial, and residential building worth a whopping $140 million got underway in Portland and vicinity during the past 12 months. The largest the largest project of the lot was the $22 million Lloyd Center on Portland's Near East Side. At groundbreaking ceremonies, Lloyd President Richard Von Hagen announced that completion of the business shopping development, one of the nation's most sizable, was scheduled for early 1960. Conrad Hilton launched a successful $3 million debenture sale in Portland to secure local financing for a $10 million downtown hotel. This highlighted Portland hotel developments that also contemplated a new Sheraton in the Lloyd Center and a big addition to the Benson. The architects came up with a model of Portland's hard-luck $8 million Exposition Recreation Center during a year that also saw the new zoo and Oregon Museum of Science and Industry move toward completion in Portland's West Hills. It was a year for ceremonies dedicating bridges and freeways, bridges like the $12 million Morrison Street span across the Willamette River. But even this monster of metal and concrete had to defer in the size department to the $14 million interstate span between Portland and Vancouver. glowing words and bright sunshine keynoted the dedication of this 3,500-foot link in U.S. Highway 99, the largest bridge the Oregon Highway Department ever had a hand in building. In contrasting weather, ceremonies brought into service the final link of the $15 million Banfield Freeway connecting Portland's east side with U.S. Highway 30. State highway builders awarded a record $68 million worth of contracts in 1958, and in 1959 they'll do even better. So building and heavy construction rate as the brightest spot in Oregon's economic picture in 1958.
I love those, man. I know you guys too. I love going back into the vault and checking out all that stuff. It's a lot of fun. We find so many cool stories in there all the time. So if you want us to find something, send us an email, reach out on Twitter, and use that hashtag #HeyDan. Just ask us a question. We'd love to try and find you answers or videos from the vault. We're actually answering one after the break about the humongous fungus in the Mountaineer National Forest. Yeah, that's right. We're going to finish the story next. All right, Robin from the Dalles has a question for us. Is there anything in the vault about the world's largest organism in Oregon? I'll be honest, Robin, there's still a lot about Oregon I'm still learning, and this was definitely one of those things. And I'm betting a lot of people from the 112 people who move to Oregon every single day are in the same boat. Now, we couldn't find anything in the KGW Vault, but yes, Oregon's Mountaineer National Forest is home to what might be the largest organism in the world. It's a sprawling, tree-killing fungus that spread more than 2 miles wide and covers nearly 2,400 acres, known as, yes, the humongous fungus. While I was pretty disappointed that it wasn't just some giant Mario-style mushroom shooting out of the ground, it is still pretty mind-blowing. This single patch of fungus weighs, they think, about 22,000 pounds. Now, the low estimates have it growing for nearly 2,000 years, while some of the high estimates say this puppy is like 9,000 years old. So while we couldn't find anything in the vault, does the vault go back 9,000 years? We'll have to take a look. But your question did send me down a mushroom-type rabbit hole, kind of like Hey Dan in Wonderland. So thank you to Robin. Keep the questions coming. I do want to say Nina Melhoff's daughter apparently thinks humongous fungus is fun to say, and I agree. Listen. It's amazing. All right, look. Could you hear that? Could we hear that at home? I couldn't hear it in my ear. It's on. She put it on the Hey Dan, hashtag Hey Dan, if you want to watch it again. We got some mass pictures I want to show you. Some people sending in selfies. Lori sending in this one. Can we? Yes, I like it. Let me get a closer look. I like that design. Very nice. Gerald, or Gerard, let's check his out too. Caging in that beard. Pete, is that Pete? No, that's Tammy. Very nice as well. Thank you, everybody. Let's check Pete out now. And someone who goes by Misheard Song Lyrics on Twitter. How about that? Here's my mask in Washington County. Yes, we can do it. I agree. Hey, keep sending those in. Use the hashtag HeyDan. You can email us at thestory@kgw.com. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. The news at 6:30 is next with Laurel Porter. For now, that is the story on, is it Tuesday? I'm all mixed up, man. We'll see you back here tomorrow.